Welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Marietta, and today I'm here with Harmesch, Kaur. So Harmesch, how do you deal when the shit gets real? Or just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Harmesch. I am a human design mentor and a nervous system mentor, and that has really helped me understand how to deal when the shit gets real. I am a life coach. I help people understand themselves, support their nervous systems, and just really get people to their more authentic selves.
Ooh, I love that. I mean, what better place can we be except our most authentic self?
Exactly.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, this probably started with your diagnosis when you were in your 20s. You had mentioned in your pre-interview that you were diagnosed with depression. So how did you cope with getting such a probably hard diagnosis?
It actually was really not easy because I grew up in a South Asian household. I'm Punjabi Sikh, and in our culture, and at that time, and this is going back more than 25 years, so a long time ago, before people really started to talk about mental health and how important it was, and it also in our culture, it just wasn't a thing. It's like we can't see that you're ill, we can't see that anything's wrong with you. So it was really hard to get the support from family to understand really what was going on. And so the support that I did get, I had to really advocate for myself with my doctors and really fight because, again, back then, no one was really talking about mental health. So to even get someone to refer you for therapy or counselling was really, really difficult. And I guess in a way, it made me become quite strong in, well, I've got to go out there and find this information myself. We didn't really have the internet back then, or it was, only just kind of starting. And so I was having to go to the local library and research what books were available, self-help. We go into bookstores now and there are shelves upon shelves of self-help books. We didn't have that back then. So it's really quite challenging for me to find that support and even understanding what is depression? What is this that I'm actually dealing with? So yeah, it was really difficult back then.
And what kind of symptoms and issues were you dealing with? Because I know each person's a little different.
So when I was diagnosed with clinical depression, but high functioning depression. And at the time, again, not really much information about it, but what we now know, it's when you are able to actually go about your day-to-day life and you can carry on with what you're doing, because a lot of people believe or think that if you're depressed, you're just in your bed all day long under your duvet, you're not doing anything. And it really wasn't like that for me. So I think that was one thing that was really hard to kind of understand. It's like, well, I can't be depressed because I'm going to work, I'm going out with my friends. But when you kind of look into high functioning depression, it's still feeling exhausted and drained and still not having that enjoyment in what you want to do. But it's almost like you're on autopilot and you're having to get through the day because you know that's what you've got to do.
Okay, that's a good way to explain it. Like that you're just literally on autopilot, not really feeling much of anything.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it was. I was completely numb to any kind of emotion. There was even the kind of sadness that people feel. There wasn't even sadness there. It was just complete nothing.
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they have any idea where it stemmed from, or I don't know if that was a thing?
Well, they didn't. So I did go to. There was and I can forgive me because there were so many people that I did speak to. She was a psychiatrist, and she was very much in the kind of Freud camp.
Okay, gotcha.
So her diagnosis was, oh, you were kind of coming into being a teenager, and it's all to do with your body image and that kind of thing. And I that really put me off because it was like, well, I haven't actually been thinking anything about my body at
Mhm.
all. I feel depressed. I didn't have an eating disorder or anything like that. So I didn't really agree with what she thought. And it hasn't been until much later in life where I've read much more about mental health, where depression stems from. I've been through therapy, and I really began to understand that it was to do with my sense of self. I didn't really understand who I was because growing up the way that I did, everyone was always making the decisions for me. I was always getting told what to do. I had no autonomy, so I didn't even know how to be a person really in life.
Mhm.
But also having to be the adult, having younger siblings and kind of trying to help raise them as well. So it was real duality or dichotomy of being an adult, but yet not being an adult and not how knowing how to be in the world, if that makes sense.
No, that absolutely makes sense. I mean, if for your whole life, like you said, you were told what to do and how to be and how to act, then of course when you reach adulthood, you're not gonna know how to do those things because you never had to.
Mm, yeah, and also for me, I got to a point quite early on in life where the subject of arranged marriage kind of came up, and also being rejected by so many people. It did play on my self-esteem and self-worth. It was like, well, am I just not good enough? You know, should I really even be here? It kind of got to that sort of stage. Um, so it, there were some external factors, but there were a lot of internal factors as well that kind of I came to understand at a much later point in life, which is probably a good thing because, you know, at some point we have to heal, but it
Yeah,
can take, I have found it can take a long, long time to do that.
yeah, it can. Did you end up getting arranged marriage or were you able to No?
No, there was one time with my sister. So she's, I think, 3 or 4 years younger than me, and we had both been taken to the house of a friend of my mum, and there were two guys there from two separate families. So they were there with their parents, and we were all sitting in the living room. Excuse me, and then my mum and the two mums and her friend went into the kitchen. You could hear them having a bit of a chat. They came back outside, and the guy that was there for my sister, she was allowed to go and have a chat with him. The guy that was there for me, I wasn't allowed to go and have a chat with because his mum had already decided, just by looking at me, that I wasn't going to marry her son. I wasn't good enough for him. And
Oof,
when
talk about a
it
hit to the self-esteem.
I
Good
know,
gracious.
exactly. And when me, my sister, and my parents left, I said to my mum and dad, I said, that is the last time I'm ever going to meet anyone because I will not be put through that humiliation again.
Good for you.
And I think that's the first time ever I actually found my voice
Good.
to really say something. And, since then, I've never been married, I've never had children. And people do say to me, it's like, why have you never got married? And it's like, well, I've had this experience in my, still in my kind of mid 20s. It's taken me a long time to kind of get over that
Mhm.
and even think about wanting to be with anyone because if you just don't feel good enough yourself, how is anyone else going to feel, you know, think that you're good enough for them?
Yeah, that goes back to that old saying, if how can anybody love you if you don't love you?
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, do you love you now? I hope you do.
I do, and, it's taken a long time to get there, but I really, really do feel like right now, even with all the, the good parts and the not so good parts, I really love myself. And no one that is it's become an unshakable thing for me now.
Good. That's wonderful. That makes me happy just hearing that part. So what were some first steps or how did you start helping yourself to reach the point now that you do love yourself?
So obviously I had gone through therapy, I had read a lot of self-help books, um, but it wasn't really I kind of started living my life. And I just thought, oh, because this is how everyone else lives their life. I got a good job, had a good social circle, all of those kind of things. So I was thinking, yes, this is really helping me to, get over the depression, to actually start building a life of my own where I get to decide rather than other people always telling me what to do. But then I got to a point where I fell into a bit of a depression again, and it was only then that I went through another lot of therapy that I kind of made the decision I don't want to feel like this anymore. So I need to really start to understand myself and who I actually am. Um, so I, diving back into self development, and then COVID kind of hit, and we all, were not allowed to go anywhere. Um, and I did an online retreat. I think it was in the first couple of months of 2020. And there was a woman on there talking about human design. And I was like, oh, this sounds quite interesting.
Mhm.
And so I started to look into human design. And it was like, oh, so it's kind of like astrology, but a little bit more. Or that's what kind of my thinking was.
Mhm.
But then I mean, I don't know about you, but if you've anyone's like looked into human design, there's so much information out there. It's like the biggest wormhole that you can fall into.
It is for
And I
sure.
was, yeah, and I was just like, I don't really know where to start with this. So I had a reading done by somebody else, and that reading brought me to tears because I finally felt like somebody saw me. Like I finally thought to myself, wow, this is actually me. I understand that every single thing that I've gone through has been for a reason.
Mhm.
And it's kind of written here in this reading for me. So it was all kind of meant to happen. Um, but then I started to dive into human design a bit more. And it really showed me parts of myself that I didn't really know about, the parts that I didn't like so much. And I was like, okay, how do I start to improve them? And that's what's really led me to understand myself,
Mhm.
and really start that kind of journey to really loving myself, being authentic, being who I am.
I definitely had an aha moment with human design as well when I found out like what category, I guess so you'd say category, what area
Yeah,
I fell into human design. I was like, "Oh, that's why my mind works the way it does."
it is. It's so interesting
It is
because,
very fascinating.
yeah, and I think, I don't know about you, but when you kind of start going into that world, you also begin to see other people, and you're like, ah, that's why they're like that, and then you can change how you kind of relate to them
Mhm.
almost because you know that okay, the way, like you said, this is the way their mind works. So actually, to get a really good outcome of whatever we're doing, I can adjust what I'm doing or saying to meet that person where where they are at.
Yeah. So what one are you? I don't know how to say it properly, but like
Oh,
what area do you fall in?
Yeah, so I'm a manifesting generator energy type.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I'm a
yeah.
manifesting generator too.
Oh, wow, yay! I love meeting other manifesting generators because we're the best.
She doesn't mean it, but she means it. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we all have, like, our qualities, and I think everyone that I've spoken to and anyone that I've ever done a reading for, they they all wanna be a manifesting generator. And I've asked them the question why, and they've said, "Because you can do what manifestors do, and you can do what generators do. You're not just one thing. You're a mixture of both," which is true, but it also means that even though we're very good at doing lots of things, we sometimes skip over stuff, and we have to go back
Mhm,
and do it again.
mhm. To me, it was just a nice vindication because I wanna do 100 different things, and, for the longest time, people were telling everybody, like, "Oh, you can only do one thing," or, "Oh, you have to niche down to be
Mm,
successful," or, "Oh, this or all that." So, like, finding out I was a manifesting generator was like, "Oh, well, I don't have to niche down because that's not how my brain works, and that's
yeah.
not how I function."
Yeah, and I think when you do understand that, it gives you space to really explore a lot more about who you are and what
Yes.
you can do and the possibilities for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about that you read several different books. Do you have a favorite that, like, really helped you or just a book you really like?
Um, I I think when I was really going through my depression, I read a lot of Carl Jung books, and for anyone who doesn't know who Carl Jung is, I'm sure a lot of people do. I think he was also a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but he worked with Sigmund Freud for a long time. But he had a very different view on why people did the things they did or behaved the way they did from a therapeutic point of view. And I think like his books really helped me to understand myself because he talks about archetypes and the feminine and the masculine and even the kind of from the child to the adult, that kind of thing. So I think a lot of his work and a lot of what I believe in self-development really has kind of come from his work. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, we all have different books that we just resonate
Mm,
with us and give us that, like, aha moment where you
yeah.
feel seen. And we'll get back to the human design part, but you also mentioned how your nervous system is such a key aspect to how we feel and process things. So, can you talk more about that?
Yeah, so about 2.5 years ago, maybe nearly 3 years ago now, I met a coach. Well, I was supporting in a coaching program, and I met a coach in that program who then left. And she invited me to come into this 6-month group program about nervous system leadership. Now, I didn't know what she was going on about. The only thing I knew about the nervous system came from my yoga teacher training, where we talked about parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system and the vagus nerve. That was all I knew. So I didn't really know what she was going to teach me because I thought that's all it was. I went into that program with no expectations, but kind of even halfway through, I was like, why do I feel different? What is happening that all of a sudden there's a lot of grief coming up, there's a lot of sadness coming up, there's a lot of anger coming up, and I'm not in therapy. So why are all these things happening? And what I really learned about myself was that for most of my life, I'd just been bypassing every emotion that had ever wanted to be expressed. And that also kind of led me to understand my depression a lot more because depression is just stored emotion. You're not being able to express how you feel because you just don't feel that you can. And so the nervous system work, I was in the 6-month program. And I carried on working with her for another year, like just one to one, because this had kind of opened up a whole new world for me. But and I didn't even realise that this was something to even be looked at, because when we talk about understanding ourselves, we always look at the mindset stuff. It's like, what do you believe? What do you think? We don't talk so much about what we feel or what we haven't been allowed to feel. And that's where, like, our nervous system kind of comes in, and understanding really how I have built my own internal safety, and how we all build our internal safety from childhood. That's what plays out in our life the more and more we go on. So even though these experiences up until the age of about 7 or 8, that's really the foundation of our life. And I know it's being talked about more and more now, but I still don't think it's talked about enough, because it's so important that we get the care and the regulation, or are taught how to regulate ourselves, so that we can create that safety and go on and be, I don't know, effective adults, if you want to call it that, in later life.
Yeah. Are there first steps people can take to like kind of figure out what's going on with their nervous system?
Yeah, I think, and most people have probably heard of the word triggers. So when you are triggered by something, that is really your nervous system is telling you, okay, I don't feel safe, or I feel uncomfortable in this situation, this environment, or around certain people. And rather than trying to, what we all do is process it through our mind and say, oh, this is happening because of this, or we give people excuses, and is actually becoming aware of what is your body doing right now. Like, is it tensing up? Are you getting tight in your stomach? Are your fingers starting to tingle? Is there sensation anywhere else in your body? And just becoming aware of what is happening when you get those triggers, and don't necessarily process it. Just be curious about, okay, why is that happening? Why is it because that person talking in that way or saying that thing to me, why is it making me really like tense up in my body?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the first step that I would say to people, is just start noticing, maybe write it down, and come back to it at a time when you're not feeling triggered or activated, and then start to just ask yourself those questions. Why did I feel like that? Why is my body reacting in that way?
I mean, that's a good place to start for sure. Having a
Mm,
conversation with your own body and seeing,
yeah,
"Hey, what's going on? What can I do?"
yeah,
So you're obviously doing human design now. That's part of what you do as a coach.
yeah.
Do you also tie in the nervous system with your coaching and with your work with people?
Well, it's really interesting that you asked that, because for a long time they've kind of been two separate parts of my business, because as a manifesting generator, I want to do everything. And I was talking to someone about nervous system work, and I was like, I've been trying to put the two together somehow. And I said, because with human design, when you start looking a bit deeper into it, what it really needs for you to have is a connection to your body. You need to be able to tap into your body and read its signals. So, in one sort of way, there is that connection between, okay, well, we need to get you connected to your body, and we do that through healing your nervous system. But I still haven't managed to come to some sort of program, or anything like that, where I put them together. Although anyone who works with me will get a little bit of both. It's like, it's really difficult for me not to weave a little bit of nervous system work into the human design, or a little bit of human design into nervous system work. So, I kind of work with it in that way.
I mean, it makes sense, and they do sound like, which is why I asked, they do sound like they do have a lot of similarities, but I guess here's your sign to figure out a way that they go together, I guess.
I think that's the thing. I need to tap into that some ideas or something to be able to bring them in together, because I think both of these, I guess you call them modalities. You can, human design you can apply to every single area of your life. Nervous system work, it impacts every area of your life. So it's not, like some programs or courses that we do where it's specifically maybe for relationships or for business or for parenting. They're both something that can go across anything that you want to do in your life.
Yeah. So, what do you love the most about human design, and how did you start your business to start working with clients?
So I think, like I said earlier, it really, that reading that I had, it just made me feel really seen, and like, oh wow, this is who I am, and someone understands me. And I've had quite a few clients say the same thing to me, is when I've done reading for them, it's like, wow, I feel seen. And I think just hearing that from someone, because I think that's all that any of us really want, is to be seen as ourselves and who we are. And it really, that kind of, just getting that joy almost from someone saying that kind of motivates me to keep going with it. But personally, if I ever feel stuck in life, like this whole kind of, how do I bring human design and nervous system work together, I always go back to my human design, and I start to like look through, okay, where am I not in alignment with myself? What do I need to do maybe right now to pivot into what I think I want? Um, because it shows me my traits, it shows me all of my gifts, if you like. So is there something that I'm not tapping into that I can work on for a little while, and hopefully that kind of gets me unstuck, and it just gets me back on the right path in life. So that's why I love it so much. It doesn't matter what's happening, if I can go back to my reading, just go through it, and then somehow it just helps me get back on track.
Kind of gives you like a baseline.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. And so, how did you start your business and start working with clients?
So I was actually working in my full-time job at the time. I'm a business analyst by trade. I like analysing and understanding things, so that kind of lends itself quite well to coaching and human design. And it was because I had done this online retreat, I found out about human design. I went and then did a certification with the woman who had been talking about it. And from that, I just kind of put myself out on social media, and I managed to get a support coaching role with someone, not in human design, it was just general life coaching. And a lot of people from that space then wanted readings. So now I just, it's part of my business. People know that I do readings. So, every so often I'll get someone referring somebody else, or, someone just DMing me on Instagram or whatever, and asking about my services. And the same with the nervous system work. It's really just been about going out on social media, talking about the nervous system, just really sharing that information. And I'm not really one of those coaches who kind of goes out and launches things every so often. Because I want people to be curious about themselves, because both of these modalities really need you to be curious and not want black and white answers for everything, which is what we all want sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's if you're curious, come and ask and we can have a chat and then we'll just see where it goes from there. I'm not, yeah, a really in your face by my program kind of coach.
I like that. I like the a relaxed approach. But for
Mm.
any listeners that do want to get in touch with you and work with you, how can they do so?
So they can get in touch with me on Instagram. It's just my first name dot last name. You should be able to find me on there, or you can head over to my website, which is www.harmeshcore.com. All the info is all there for you to look through.
Perfect. I love it. And what advice do you want to leave my listeners with?
What advice? You already know who you are. Your body already knows who you are. It is just being able to tap into yourself and tap into who you are and bringing that out of yourself, being able to express yourself in the way that you are designed to, really. And yeah, just get in touch with yourself. And it doesn't mean, saying affirmations in the mirror or anything like that. It's really noticing when you're in different situations and around different people, how is your body reacting to things? Because that's your body telling you something. So I'd really, really get people to start tapping into that wealth of knowledge that you already have inside of you.
That's a beautiful reminder. I think we do, myself included, forget that we just need to trust ourselves and listen to what we're telling ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And I am the same. I know when things are not going the way that I want them to go. I always remind myself, well, hang on a minute, how connected am myself or connected to myself right now or to what my intentions are? If I'm not, that's what's causing me to have this kind of resistance that's going on in life.
Yeah. Great reminder for us all to just talk to yourself, figure out what's going on.
Yes, you know
Yeah,
yourself better than anyone else does.
absolutely. You sure do. Thank you so much, Harmesh, for being here. I appreciate you. You've had wonderful and beautiful advice for my listeners.
Thank you so much for having me, Rieta. It's been amazing.
And this is how to deal when the shit gets real, guys. I'll see you all next episode.